Hi and welcome to How to Successfully Optimize Google's Automated Strategies. It's very nice to have you all here, and I'm honored that you're taking your time to listen to me, and hopefully we will come to some interesting conclusions and share some interesting strategies and ways to work with the new digital marketing. My name is Torkel Öhman. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Amanda AI, a company that automates digital marketing. We support Facebook, Google, and Bing currently, and we're developing for more channels. But let's get on topic. So, more and more people are automating their digital marketing. They're automating their strategies. They're using automated and or smart strategies that Google provides. When we started this company 4.5 years ago, that was not the case, not at least in the extent that it is today. Then you could still outperform an automated strategy not in all cases perhaps, but the room was still there to have a few campaigns or a few groups of keywords or a few categories where you could outperform and maximize conversions or smart shopping when that was launched. When we started and when we had both the standard shopping campaigns and the smart shopping campaigns, and we put them to the test against each other, we had about 80% of the budget being dedicated to the standard shopping campaigns, meaning we could outperform the smart shopping campaigns, but now it is almost inverted. So now it's almost 80% that's going to smart shopping or at Performance Max now that they have upgraded the campaigns. And I think that that is the way it's going to move forward. Currently you have some small cohorts of stuff that still works better with manual or enhanced CPCs, but it's also kind of you need to have some sort of hubris if you think that you can outsmart all the people that are working on Google, and especially if you take into consideration all the global data they have on users, all the data and all the knowledge and insights that they have that you don't have. So for those of you who don't use automated strategies, of course there are cases where you can't. You have too few conversions, or you're tracking through something that you can't feed back to Google Ads or similar. There's always outlier cases, but for most of you who has an ordinary goal and an ordinary amount of conversions, automated strategies is the way to go, because that's also the only true way that you can take, or you can use all the global data that Google has on their users, on search terms, on trends, and so on. But just because it's automated and it's smart, you still have you still have some things that you can impact and that you can change. And we're going to go through all of them, but just briefly, it's your strategy, and that is your business strategy. So what is the goal of your digital advertisement, and how do you see the said channel being a part of that? So in this case we're talking about Google. What is your strategy as a business, and what is your strategy as a business for Google? Then you have your bid strategy. You can go for a semi-automated as enhanced CPC. You can go for something that is impression-based, which is automated but not very intelligent. Or you can go for maximized conversions, or you can go for maximize conversion value or target CPA, target ROAS, etc. We're going to go through those and the impact it has both on optimization but also on overall volume you're eligible to be visible on. Then we have your input, so the things you put into the campaigns. If you push in keywords, ad copy, feeds, optimizing for quality score, all that stuff, Then we have your local data, so the data that you share with Google from your local site, usually through Google Analytics, but also through customer match lists and similar. And then you have the global data, which is Google's data, the data that you don't have access to, all the things they know about users and about search queries and so on. And we're going to talk about how to optimize these and how to leverage these. But let's start with your strategy. So your strategy becomes quite more important now than it was before, because when you're sitting and manually doing something, you're a human, you have inherent knowledge about things that are not relevant to Google Ads. Perhaps you know that I want to push this category because we earn more money on it, or I know that an order is more important than the order value because that is the model for our business, even if the revenue numbers are greater. But the strategy becomes very, very important because that also determines how aggressive are you, how much of the potential volume out there are you willing to take, and how much can you pay for it. Because if you're optimizing and basing your return on ad spend, let's say you're in e-commerce and you say that, yeah, I have 50% margin, I need a return on ad spend on 2 or above. If you have a competitor with exactly the same margins and the same prerequisites or the same type of products and so on, so 2 similar web pages, and you're saying that I need to get this revenue on 1 purchase on the click, so I need 2 in return on ad spend. And your competitor is saying that, yeah, but I have quite a lot of money and I can pay in advance for a purchase I presume is going to happen later. So that competitor is going for either a customer acquisition model, or they're lowering their ROAS target because they know that for each conversion they are getting on a paid channel, they're getting 0.4 or 0.6 or whatever in an unpaid channel. And when you're calculating the profit that way, you can lower your targets. And if you're lowering your targets, you can probably take more of the volume because you're prepared to spend more, both for the clicks and for the conversions and for the customer acquisitions. That requires that you can afford to pay this, and this becomes sort of not the science, but it becomes quite complex. But it is very important because that is things that you previously, perhaps subconsciously or consciously, thought about when you did your campaigns. If you're following the best practice and you're going broad and you have few campaigns with lots of keywords and you're optimizing for a single target, so for CPA or return on ad spend or whatever, the machines and Google and optimization does not know that. So it becomes very important. What is your strategy? And then we have your bid. Oh, sorry, I like this slide. It sort of ties into the next slide. But this is the good and the bad news with computers and with automation. I think Ted Nielsen said it very eloquently. The good news about computers is that they do what you tell them to do. The bad news is that they do what you tell them to do. And that, of course, sort of is a funny way of saying that you really need to think about what you're telling the machines to do, because that is what they will do. Depending on what target you're setting, that is what, both if you're using Amanda AI, the Amanda AI, that machine is going to optimize for, but also if we only isolate Google, if you're telling Google that this is what I want to achieve, they will try their hardest to achieve that, and they're usually very successful with succeeding that. That means that you need to be very, very certain what you're asking them to achieve. If we take profit bidding as an example, as sort of, I put it as a passive strategy, because you're really smart and you gather a lot of data and you're doing this on actual profit. It is very smart, but there's also a risk of limiting the potential volume you're able to reach, and it's a quite simple reason for that. So for those of you who don't know, profit bidding is when you usually push up a Google Analytics property and you push in actual profit instead of revenue. So if you're selling a product for $100 and you're earning $10 on that, you're pushing out the transactional value of $10, and you can push that to Google Ads, and you can say optimize for this. So you're optimizing for profit instead of revenue. Sounds pretty nice, right? And it is pretty nice. I'm not saying that is the wrong way to go. Absolutely not. But you also need to be very. You need to know what you're then telling Google to optimize for, because you probably have lower margin in percentile on campaign products, for example. Perhaps you push campaign products with basically zero profit, or at least low profit, because that is a good way to get the customer to do the first purchase. Perhaps they're buying other products as well. There's a lot of reasons to have campaign products so that you're not earning that much money on. But if you're not earning that much money on it, and you're pushing it out to Google Ads, and you're saying, here's a product, I earn $1 per sold product. The revenue is perhaps $1,000 because perhaps it costs you $1,000 to purchase and to ship and so on. But the actual profit could be quite low. That will not be prioritized, and that will probably not be shown, because if you have a competitor who isn't doing profit bidding, they could have the same campaign and the same product and the same low margins, but they are pushing out to Google that this product is worth $1,000 for me, which in this case, just this hypothetical case, is relatively high. Then Google is going to push that product, and especially if they see that it's getting clicks and conversions and so on. So there is the risk that you are increasing profits but decreasing revenue. And again, this perhaps is the way you want it to work, but just be careful and know that the machines will achieve what you ask for, or at least they will try, and they are usually quite good at doing that. Then you have sort of a scale. As I said, the more intelligent you are, the less potential volume you're reaching for. Basically, if you are calculating a customer acquisition based model, and you're taking into consideration a customer lifetime value, that they do several purchases, that a few of those purchases in the future will be through channels where you're not paying anything for it, so email or organic or direct or whatever, then obviously you're willing to pay more for the same transaction as your competitors, unless they're doing the same. It also means that this is a slide explaining. I'm going to go through it. That the more variables you are asking Google to take into consideration, the less volume you're eligible to be visible on. And let's just take an easy example. If you have a keyword, let's say it's shoes, and you have 100 searches a day on shoes, and you add that keyword to your campaign, and you're telling Google to use the strategy search impression share. You have a search impression share target, and you put it to 99%. It's really easy for Google to calculate and to understand, when should I show this ad, when should I serve this ad based on this advertisement. Do they know the amount of search queries? They know the budget. Let's say you put an unlimited budget on it just for fun. It can just push out that ad as much as possible. As soon as you add more variables that they need to take into consideration, the volume by definition becomes smaller. If you just say that you want to maximize conversions, then you're suddenly telling Google that, okay, I have this keyword shoes, I have this set budget, and I want to get as many conversions as possible for it. For Google to do that, they need to take into consideration contextual signals when the user is searching for shoes. So what mood am I in? Or mood perhaps is the wrong word, but when am I searching? What is my previous search history? Does it look like I'm interested in buying shoes? Have I done X, Y, and Z? And then they need to predict the conversion rate, because if they can't predict the conversion rate for the user in combination with the search query, then they can't deem if this is worth spending the money it costs to pay for a click on that user. And this obviously makes those 100 searches a day on shoes become less than 100 searches, because Google doesn't have information on all users. You can have incognito modes, you can have untrackable devices, you could have a completely new user or a completely new device. You could have a user who has several different devices but several different user IDs and so on. So this becomes the 100 search queries that you were eligible for if you only optimize for impressions suddenly becomes less and less. And the more you put in, the more responsibility you put on Google, the more they need to predict. And the more they need to predict, the less volume is the potential volume you're going to get. So if you put in, for example, something related to conversion value, then Google also needs to predict what they call revenue per click or average basket size, and calculate something along the lines of what is this click worth. And if you're putting a target on it, then it becomes really complicated, because then they have a 30 days trailing budget that they need to take into consideration. So how much you're going to spend in 30 days, and you obviously don't want to spend the same amount each day, so you need to take into consideration trends and if it's going up or if it's going down, and you're basically going to need to predict the future within 30 days. They're very, very good at this, and it's not critique, it's just saying that the more they need to take into consideration, the more data they need, both on users and on trends, and the less potential volume there is for you to pick up. Then you have your input. So it's kind of self-explanatory, but it's worth mentioning again and again. Even with an automated strategy, you need to input something into the system. So if you create a search campaign, you can put it on maximize conversions or whatever. If you don't put in any keywords or any ads, you won't show or serve any ads. It's quite simple. If you put in one ad and 0 keywords, you still won't show any ads. And if you put in one keyword, your potential amount of views and potential amount of conversions is equal to basically how many people are searching for that keyword. If you put in 1 billion keywords, you probably have the potential to be visible on way too much stuff and burn too much money, which isn't what you're after either. So somewhere between those lines is the optimal amount of keywords. And basically what I'm saying with this is that even if it's automated, you still need to work on the account. So you still need to add keywords, you still need to update your feeds if you're talking about Google Shopping and Performance Max and so on. If you're working with DSA ads, it is our highly recommended or our recommendation that you work with product feeds and do it in combination with keywords to pick up trends, and perhaps not only be visible on what Google thinks you need to be visible on, but have a combination of DSA and keywords and so on. So keywords represent the potential amount of impressions you can get. The potential amount of impressions you can get equals the potential amount of clicks, the potential amount of conversions, and so on. And you need to find your balance. You could say that you could only rely on Google, and again, this is not critique. It's easy to stand and talk about things when we're working together with Google. Amanda, I always use, or almost always use, automated strategies and different tools Google gives us. But Google needs to be sure that they're making a good result. They're not very explorative. So you're usually talking about exploration and exploitation. So how much are you testing, and how much are you doing stuff that you know works? And for reasons that are quite obvious, if you think about them, Google needs to be very exploitive. So they need to do things that they know will work. And it's very easy if you look at a Smart Shopping or now a Performance Max campaign, and you look at the amount of products you have in Merchant Center. Unless you have very, very few products, then this perhaps isn't, or then this isn't an issue. But the products you have in Merchant Center, and how many of those products are getting clicks and conversions and so on and so forth. If you have a couple of hundred or a couple of thousands, or if you have tens of thousands, there's quite easy to see that there's not that much exploration being done, and that in turn is also kind of self-explanatory, because if you have 10,000 products, if Google would test or explore all those 10,000 products to see what happens if I get clicks on these, that would be incredibly expensive for the advertiser, and the result wouldn't be good. So it's something that is the way it should be, but you as an advertiser still need a strategy. How do we wildcard test? How do we get clicks on these products which isn't getting clicks? Perhaps you have data from search ads or from other channels or from your direct sales that you know that these products perhaps should improve, and how do we get that mechanical testing in there? So how do we increase the number of products that the automated strategies or campaigns pick up and use? You have your local data, which is mostly, there are of course other types of local data, but mostly it's Google Analytics audiences, it's customer match lists when you push up your customer match lists, and it is your goals. And goals is perhaps something that is a bit underutilized. There is a very good reason to set up soft goals and soft conversions. It isn't only to increase the number of conversions, but it's also a great way to give an indication on what a valuable user is, and to get another way for both you and for Google to know sort of, this is my audience, this is working. It isn't a conversion, but it is on the path to a conversion, or it is still something that is important for my business. Your local data is your gold mine, because that is a big part of what you are using to learn the algorithms. So basically how Google understands what your audience is. And here is also something that you should take into consideration, is the granularity of your remarketing lists and on the audiences you set up in Google Analytics. If you only set up all users, and all users is the only list that you share with Google Ads, then that is the only list they can use. If you have set up abandoned carts as well, then you have two lists, and we're going to talk a bit about how Google looks when they're combining lists and stuff like that. But then you suddenly have all users where you perhaps have a big percentage which is irrelevant. And then you have another list where you can say that, but this is my audience who hasn't made a transaction, but they have added something to the cart, and that is a high indicator of a good customer. So you need to work with your local data and how you set up audiences and how you set up goals and so on. So smart bidding and audiences, obviously. Smart bidding uses audiences. This became, for those that it wasn't clear before, it became very clear when Google launched Performance Max, and you need to basically feed the algorithm when you set up the asset group. You need to say that these are the audiences that you should you should use as training material, basically. So you're choosing which audiences should Google use when they are optimizing the campaigns. Granularity is key, at least when we are talking about audiences. It's better to have more audiences than less audiences, both because Google can combine them. You can also, if we're talking about Performance Max, when you're choosing which audience to target which asset group, or if you're talking about prioritizing or attributing conversions, clicks, and impressions to different audiences, the more granularity you have, the better conclusions you can draw. If you only have all users, it's hard to know if users who has done a product view or who has arrived through different channels are more valuable for you than users who hasn't. So granularity is perhaps a bit harder to get an overview of if you're talking about data studios and if you're doing this manually, but it is definitely something that is worth setting up. Global data, what can you do with global data, right? It's the data Google has on users. You can do a few things with it, but it's mostly a black box. You don't know the search trends for the users who are searching for keywords or product related to your Google ads. What you can do is you can improve on data. So all data is good data, even bad data, something along the lines with that. But it is good to have more data than less data. It is good to know which audiences aren't working or which demographics aren't working. Now, of course, you don't want to spend too much money on it, but even a campaign which just generates clicks, which isn't generating conversions, they are still an indicator, and it's still data that can be used to know what is working. So you're both working with negatives and with positives. The wrong audience can help you find the right audiences, in the same way as you can push bid adjusters, which we're going to talk about soon, to inform Google which are your audiences and which audiences should get the attribution for the impressions, clicks, and conversions. You can also do it negatively and say that these are not a common denominator, these are not impacting my performance in a good way, they are actually impacting it in a bad way. So smart campaigns, and this is a slightly older presentation. We should upgrade it to Performance Max campaigns, obviously, but they are working in a similar way. But it is this element of Performance Max which is really important. It is based on the Google Insights, which we talked about, the global insights, which we don't have any information about, but it is also in combination with your insights. So your audience lists which you share, your brand, your prices, your number of conversions, and so on. It is a combination of these two, and it's an extremely correlation between the size of your marketing lists and the size of your web page, and how much your potential is to spend on smart shopping, or in this case the shopping part of Performance Max. And that tells us that the more users you have and the more similars Google can build and the more audience lists which are relevant, the more you can spend on these campaigns. And these campaigns are usually the best performing campaigns. So it is a matter of data, feeding Google the right data to get as good of a result as possible with as high ad spend as possible. So the $10 million question: can you influence a smart strategy? Now, this is perhaps somewhat a secret, or it has at least been treated as a secret, or I've been talking to the wrong people. But it is, you can influence a smart strategy, and it isn't a secret. It is. It's documented in the playbooks that Google has. They even have the playbook Smart Bidding and Audiences, which is where this slide is taken from. It's documented on their page, but it is also a bit complex. So yeah, you can influence it, and you can influence it basically in two different ways. So when you did bid adjustment historically, or when you're doing them now with manual bids, it's a way to change the bid, change what you're prepared to pay per click based on the user. So you have a flat bid of €1 for the keyword shoes, and if I know that it's a male who's searching, I'm multiplying that by 1.2, and I'm prepared to pay €1.2 per click. We obviously use it in that way as well on the campaigns that are doing manual bids, but it's also a way to both attribute and to target smart strategies. So if you're pushing in bid adjustments, you are telling Google which list they will prioritize. So I don't know if you see my mouse, but here it is. If a user is on multiple lists, for example, a higher bid modifier means we will prioritize your preferred list, but not use the bid modifier in the auction itself. So it will not. There it is. It will not affect the actual CPCs, but it will be a prioritization between lists. The other effect of bid adjusters, and this is from Google's web page, is that it is an attribution. So which list should be attributed, the impression, the click, the conversion, etc., if the user is on several lists. And almost all users are on several lists. And there is a hierarchy to this. If we're talking about remarketing lists and customer match lists, those are in their own hierarchy. And then we're talking about demographics, and then we're talking about affinity and in-market audiences. But if we talk about the easiest ones, which perhaps is affinities or in-market audiences, I'm not only interested in one subject. I'm not only on the list of sci-fi books or financial business or whatever the web pages are that I've been surfing on. I'm on several of those lists. I have several interests, and with bid modifiers, you can change, or you can at least you can change, or you can at least be sure that it is the right list that is being attributed to it. And you want to do this because you have a lot more data on your audiences in Google Analytics, and you have your local data where you can see that these are the common traits. These are the things that are making this user interesting for me. And you do that with bid adjustments. Google has in their playbook, they have two different approach: the fine comb and the wide net. We obviously, since we automate this, and this is done purely automatic, we push for the wide net. That's what we're working with, and I think that regardless of how you're working with it, it is better to have more data that is a bit harder to comb through, or how you want to phrase it, than to have too few segmentations and miss something that is important. So yeah, with automation comes complexity. It really does. A few years ago, you could be a rock star on Google if you found a category which was underutilized, or there was not enough competition. You could get incredible results just by being quite smart and working quite much with your bids and your audiences and your bid modifiers and so on. Now we must rely more on automation. We rely on the big domains, Google, Facebook, Bing, etc., because they have so much data on the users. They are very good at optimizing this, and then we need to give them the best possible data to perform as good as possible, and that is much more complex than changing bids up and down with a few euros or a few cents. Liberté, égalité, optimiser, revolutionizing your digital advertising. Yeah, so if you're interested about learning more about Amanda, please just let me know or any of my colleagues, and we'll be happy to talk more about it. Thank you so much for your time.